You're listening to Ready That Go podcast, where we talk about the mysteries of parenting. My name is Lenart.
And my name is Demian. Among other things, we explore books on parenting and discuss the chapters on this podcast.
Join us on our journey as we attempt to incorporate our new knowledge into everyday fatherhood. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Ready That Go podcast, where we talk about parenting and challenges of fatherhood. Hey Damian, so how you been? What's happening? Should we recap
Leonard.
the past week a bit?
Yeah, sure. Good to be chatting to you again. This past week's been good. One of my goals last week was to be more conscious of the way I was playing with Jackson and kind of structure my days a bit more. And that was actually extremely rewarding. I went as far as kind of scheduling my day. I didn't stick to it, but it gave me a guideline of what we could do. I'm fortunate enough to spend 2 full days with Jackson a week, and then the weekends, of course, with the family. And so we played in the morning. We went for a walk to the park. We had a painting and drawing session. We came home and made a nice lunch together. And I wanted to hear and listen to what his needs were while playing. But I also wanted to not hand over complete control to Jackson, which is very much how I would often spend my days, just going with the flow. And there was a lot of, and I suppose maybe we were really in tune, but there was a lot of reciprocal kind of acknowledgement. Jackson was really hearing me and I was really hearing him. And that was on Monday. And we just had a really fantastic day together. So that was good. I really felt quite rewarding. Jack also had a really good day at school yesterday, which he's been struggling. I've mentioned it a couple of times, this control thing, especially about getting dressed. And the teachers were very, very happy with him. He came home and he took off all his clothes without us having to ask him. And so it was a fantastic day.
Awesome.
But this morning it all changed. But I'll tell you about that later on.
My week was okay as well. I still haven't gotten to journaling, but I did got myself a journaling notebook, so it's coming.
Nice.
It's on its way. I was focusing mainly on being present with Noel and responding consciously, and try to make everything a bit more lighthearted and more playful. So that our communications, and when we go from one activity to another, that they are playful. So brushing her teeth, playful with singing. So that was my main focus, because I was wondering a lot, why do I quickly go to being more serious and now it's time to do that, why not stick to the playfulness, to the and it's much easier if you do it in a playful way. She's much more happy to cooperate, and so that was a good experience. So I want to work on that more.
I definitely, on that note, I can completely relate. And I think one of the things for me is that when, especially coming to the end of the day, it's like, it's my time soon, you know? And so I'm thinking 5 steps ahead. I'm not thinking in the moment of doing the toothbrushing, of having the bath, you know? I'm thinking of the next step already, and they can sense that. And we'll notice how they sense that in this chapter as well.
Yeah. So about the chapter we are going to talk about today, for me it was quite a difficult chapter. Difficult in a way you read about the things you're doing and how you could improve them. So it was a welcome chapter. It talks about communication, and especially how important communication between a parent and a child really is. So they talk about different sorts of communication, and the main sort or is contingent communication, and he describes that as sort of collaborative communication. So you as a parent, you receive signals from your child, you process them, and you respond to the signals from your child, and you respond to the signals. So to the what your child is actually experiencing and actually saying, and you respond to that. You don't respond based on your past experiences or judgmental or any way. But so it's a very communication that is connected. It flows. So you feel your child and you respond to his needs and what he's saying. And I really like this because it describes that based on the responses that your child gets from you as a parent or different child from their caretakers, they actually define their self and they ground their self, like autobiographical self, more because they get validation for their experiences, their emotions, their thoughts. And it's really important to have this communication with your child in tune. And even when your messages from your child don't immediately make sense to you, it's really important that you just meet their needs, right? You don't you listen to them and you respond to what they're saying, not based on your expectations, based on your past experiences, based on your judgment, but just really listen and really respond to what your child needs and says. And when your child...
For us specifically, I think at this age, 3 years old, where they're using their words a lot more, but they don't necessarily have all the words to describe what they want. It's so important to pick up all the non-verbal parts of communication as well, and really look at their facial expressions. And I mean, it's always important, no matter how old or young your child is or who you're communicating with. But a lot is said, and one also has to be very, very careful of our own expressions. I know you're going to go into that now. But yeah,
I agree. And the important is because when your child's needs or signals are not understood and your child doesn't feel understood, these little things can become big issues for them and for you. And so it's important to have that. This communication is really important, and self-knowledge and how your self-knowledge is built, it's pretty much through communication with other people, right? And through connections you create with other people, and that as a child is even more obvious. And when there is a mismatch between a child's need for response and the actual response for experience, children can feel isolated and alone and not felt. So, and there are a couple of really good examples in the book. So, Demian,
the one example that I think hit home for both of us, a bit of an extreme example, but it was based on someone's experience of a teacher in a classroom, and the children were set tasks to do some work on their own, doing some drawing activities, and it was the task that they were set was specific about doing it on their own. And one of the children was really struggling with the task, and he had a question for the teacher. So he got up from his desk and he went to the teacher, and the teacher was dealing with a different group of children on a slightly different activity. And he asked the teacher for her attention. And because the teacher had told him to sit by himself and work on this task by himself, she didn't want to give him his attention. So without turning around, she said to the child, "You're not here right now." And the child got really confused and didn't understand this. So he tapped her on the shoulder and said, like, I need help with this. And the teacher turned around and said to the child, you are not here. And just retelling the story, it's like, oh, it's quite impactful. And the child was really confused, and he went back to his seat and he just finished the task at hand, but there was layers of confusion, partially because he didn't understand the fact that he was told he wasn't here, but he was here and she was speaking to him. But at the same time, she's telling me that I'm not here. So there was that confusion, that dismissal, and not being heard. And I can imagine, I mean, it's not judgmental in the sense that in a teaching environment, when you've got a huge group of children and you're having to deal with every child and the task at hand, it can be very, very difficult. But that example was quite profound in the sense of not hearing the child's needs and not being in tune or not being contingent in their communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's difficult. I have a lot of examples where I know I fail as a parent with Noelle when she comes home from kindergarten and she would run up. And if I make an effort and connect with her and greet her and be with her in that moment, she will act in a very nice way towards me. And if I do that briefly and just mentally and then go about my business, she will have difficulties for the next couple of hours with me. You're saying, now that you just go back to work, or that you go away, I'm going to play with mom. And so it's really interesting how this connection actually affects our everyday lives. And
absolutely. Another example that I experienced last week, Jack and I took Carla to work, and she works just out on the outskirts of Budapest. So it's quite a long drive out there. So we got the opportunity to use the car, which was quite fun. And on the way home, we needed to do some shopping. And there was this huge shopping center called Auchen. Massive shop. And we were walking through there, and Jack loves it in there because he gets to ride the trolleys that have the little car attached to it. So it was good fun and it was something to kill some time. But honestly, even if you just want to get like some basic food items from that shop, it takes forever. And we walked past the toy section, and the toy section in a shop like that is massive. And we were looking at all the toys, and I always tend to lean towards Lego because Lego is fun for me too. But Jackson was fascinated by the girls section. And of course, there's the blue section for boys and the pink section for girls, which is another whole conversation in itself. But Jack really liked this Barbie aeroplane. And it was hideous. Like, I don't know. Daddy, this is the freaking coolest thing. This is amazing. I want this one, Daddy. And I'm like, Jack, I don't think you really want that one, come check this cool stuff over here. And I realized I missed such an opportunity to really listen and hear what he was saying. And it must have been so confusing for him, because here he is saying this is really cool. And I'm saying, no, you think it's not cool. And like, now his brain is like, hang on, but it is cool. I think it's cool, but Daddy says I don't think it's cool. What's going on here? And that was a perfect example of non-contingent communication. I wasn't hearing him. I was bringing my past and also putting him in a box. And fortunately, we continued having a really good time. But actually, it came back to haunt me that afternoon, because he got me good. We were sitting at home, and we were talking about our day, and he said to me, Dad, do you remember that almost his words, do you remember that very cool pink aeroplane? I want that one. And he said, Daddy, it was cool. I was like, okay. And then I could hear him. So he gave me the opportunity to recover. Just a quick anecdote was yesterday. It was raining. I sent you a picture actually. And we didn't have the car, and I went to go pick Jackson up from school, which is about a 5-kilometer cycle away. And went to pick him up. I was soaking wet by the time I got there. And I said, Jack, I'm so sorry. You're going to get wet. Here's my jacket. I brought an extra jacket, extra clothes. I said, but it'll be an adventure. It'll be quite fun. He's like, okay, Daddy, cool, calm and collected. I was like worried about him being frustrated about not having the car. Halfway home, I turn around and Jackson's fast asleep in the child seat with his head back and the rain like falling. It's hot. It's really cold outside. It's like 1 degrees. It's almost like icy, the water. And he's absolutely passed out. And when we got home, I said, Jack, did you enjoy that? He said, yeah, and the rain was falling on my face and I was having a sleep. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And once again, you must listen to I had preconceived ideas about what he would like. And he was just so happy to be in the open and having that experience.
It really makes me sad that your automatic response is always not so in tune with your child, right? Like the first resource you grab, it's like these old known patterns that you have ingrained in you. And like Noelle hits herself when I think it's not hard, and she said, oh, it hurts. And I said, no, it doesn't hurt.
No, it's not hard.
Oh,
yeah, right.
That's so horrible. It's like these are really like the things that makes like disconnect in their brains, like the confusion, but it does hurt. So yeah, I saw you hurt yourself. Does it hurt? Like that would be an alternative answer to it.
Yeah.
And so this contingent communication is really important. And I also like how he describes, there's one sentence in the book is that our sense of I is how influenced by how we belong to a we, right? So our sense of I is influenced by how we belong to a we. So it's really important for children to belong to us and to feel connected. Yeah. And another part of the book, this chapter that's really stood with me is explaining that the brain is highly social organ, right? So heart pumps blood, like kidneys filter and stomach digest, but the brain is social, right? And how he explains it, that in all the communications, we always have the left side of the brain that communicates, which is a verbal words communication. Then you have the right side of the brain communicating non-verbal facial expressions, body language, eye contact, and all the parts that consist of contingent communications. And these two parts of the brain, or these two versions of communication, should be in line, like synchronized. And that's also something I noticed, that I think in our quest to protect our children, we don't expose them to bad emotions, for example, right? So when you're angry or sad, you automatically say, no, I'm okay. But that's your left side of the brain communicating, and your left side of the brain is communicating with your child's left side of the brain. But your right side of the brain, which is your emotions, also communicates to your child's right side.
Child's right side of the brain,
So he knows what's happening with you, but you tell him you're okay, which also creates a confusion. And not just create a confusion, it teaches your child to not talk about these emotions. And it would be completely normal, better, just to say, I feel really, really sad at the moment, but it's not your fault. It's something mine, right? Just to give words to what's felt at the moment. And
speaking of that, I don't know if you've experienced this, but reverse psychology, does it really work with Noelle?
I don't think I ever tried it.
Sorry?
I don't think I ever tried it with Noelle. Yeah. Reverse psychology? No.
We didn't consciously choose to do it, and I'm not proud of it, but I'm still shocked at how it works. Like if we're playing a game and I said, Jackson, please get in the bath, right? And he doesn't want to. And then I say, Jackson, don't get in the bath. And I smile. I said, I don't want you to get in the bath. Now, there are those mixed messages right there, right? The left brain, right brain stuff. And he looks at me and smiles, and it's immediately a game for him. And he hops in the bath within seconds. Now, it's very easy to get out of difficult situations by applying that technique. I don't necessarily like it, because I can see that confusion can instill. And then when you're in a situation where you actually don't want him to do something and he thinks it is a game, so he goes and does it, it can cause such a ripple negative impact. But having read this chapter and having this discussion with you now really made me think that left brain communication, right brain communication, then you go across it completely with this kind of, it's poor children. I mean, we can start logically putting pieces together, but when their brains are still developing, and what we feed them creates who they are and what they perceive.
Yeah, exactly. And I also like the part of the chapter that explains that you have to have balance, right? So it's important not to go in connection only based on your previous experience or only thinking of yourself.
Yes.
Not go only listening to the child and only trying to see things from his perspective, because then you can start despising your child or even feeling angry at him because he's dominating you. So it has to be this balance of contingent communication from
both sides.
Both sides, yeah, exactly. And the last thing I would just mention is in the science part of the chapter, it's really nicely explained how they figure out that contingent communication is important. And they actually did that with infants. So the first experiment they did, they would ask a mother to have a complete poker face next to her infant, like no emotions, still face. And the child would first actively try to achieve a response from her or connection from her. Then he would become agitated, and at the end he would withdraw from the communication. And then they said, okay, but maybe if she had a smile on her face, that would be different, right? And it doesn't mean that it has to be a response. Maybe a smile is enough. And then they said, okay, let's deal with this once and for all. We'll do an experiment. And they again got a mother and a child, put them in separate rooms, and put a screen before their faces with a camera. So the child was looking at the screen and at the camera at the same time. And the mother in the other room would have the same, a screen and a camera. And they would interact through video call. And it would work, right? The child would do noises and mother would respond with nonverbal communication, and the contingent communication works. But then the last minute of that interaction, they recorded. And then they played the recorded version back to the infant. So it wasn't live anymore. It was a recording video
of that.
Yeah, it was a recording of that. Yeah, recording of that. And the mother was really happy and really smiling, really interactive in the video. But the child would start acting exactly the same way if it was a still face. So it would try to invoke connection and then became agitated and at last withdraw, even though it was a live video of his mother interacting with him. But it was not
she wasn't responding
to his needs and cues.
So
I think this communication, contingent communication, try to see things from your child's perspective is really, really important, and not being judgmental or not even interrogate your child about things, but just try to listen. Like, I think this is the most important job for us, is to listen to your child and respond to what you hear. And so,
it's fun. Like, what we're trying to do is talk about our day. I've mentioned that before. And we asked Jackson about your day. And it's very easy because we want information about what happens to him at school. And I know it's a system that you've applied before too, is you will create a story, you'll create a game around it and make it playful. But it's so easy sitting at the dinner table. Now you want to hear about his day because you want to understand certain interactions or how the teachers were or what happened at lunchtime or how he was getting to the point, how he was when he got dressed. And so you start the interrogation. So my question actually, Leonard, to you is how would you go about being more contingent in your communication, more collaborative? What can be done on a very simple, accessible way? How would you try and perceive and listen in a different way?
We have a similar, so when she comes from kindergarten, we sit at the lunch table, then we start. How was in kindergarten? Did you play with someone? Who did you play with? How it was? Did you went outside? And many times she's quiet. She won't respond, right? So I think for us, it's just to stop it at the moment she's quiet and just try to feel what she's feeling and maybe give words to that and just say, okay, I can see it was a bit stressful and you need some time, right? Or just I will try not to push her to talk, right? Because she's a very talkative child, and if she wants to talk, she will talk about it, and she does when she wants to. So her being quiet for us, it's a very clear signal, I think, that don't just talk about other things at the moment and return to the subject in a different way, maybe when you're playing. And that's what I will try with Noelle. So, and just try to give words, and I will really try to see from her perspective, because she just came from kindergarten where there's 12 kids, and it was probably quite chaotic. And maybe
probably
she
quite
just
tired.
Yeah, and maybe she just needs like 1 hour to relax and not think about it, and then she will open up. So I think that will be our approach to establish a contingent communication. So just try to be more gentle in communication. Just I don't know. I think it's very. I think this with children, it's very subtle. These things are very subtle, how they feel, how they experience things. So I will try to be more in tune, or even just try to put my focus to the thought, what is she thinking now? Or what is she experiencing now? What is she feeling now? Because I never ask myself these things, right? I just automatically ask questions. And so just to maybe focus more on actually trying to figure out what is she experiencing in that moment. I don't know if I'll succeed, but that's my wish. After reading this chapter, that was really my wish. Just try to, and just abandon all the nonsense sentences such as, no, it doesn't hurt, and just cut that out of my vocabulary just completely, and just try to, I mean, that's a human being there. Even though she's small, she has her experiences, her thoughts, her emotions, and try to, get to know that part, right? Yeah. Because the first reaction from me is always these predefined, based on my previous experiences, my childhood. And it's
to leave all of that at the door, that's something that I want to do, is just when I'm entering that room, it's time for me to be with Jackson, leave everything outside,
I can imagine that's hard as hell to achieve, but
sorry?
I think I can imagine that's hard as hell to achieve, right? Because it's so, because it's who we are, it's how we built, but it can be done, I think. So that will be, I think, my challenge for the next week. Try to establish contingent communication. And when you have it,
So sorry?
When you have that communication, because everything becomes so much easier with your child, right?
Absolutely. Right? It's almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
The reward from it.
Yeah.
Building on that is I want to journal that experience so I can reflect.
Yeah.
So I'm going to consciously go into that space, step 1. And step 2 is, I'm not going to say, okay, Jack, stop playing now. Let me write this down. I'm going to try and consciously write it down when the day is over and try and reflect.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I will try to join you in this.
I prefer journaling in the morning when I get to it. Honestly, I'm also terrible at it, but I want to reap those rewards. I'm going to try and change when I do my journaling, because maybe the day is a bit fresher in my mind. I'm going to do it after Jack goes to sleep at night.
All right.
And after I've spent a bit of time with my wife.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Demian, for today. And thanks to everyone who's listening. I hope it was fun and informative.
It was quite fun. Just a quick one for anyone who listens this late. It's a long session. We officially launched and we got to this episode. So it was very fun posting, and thank you, Lenart, for all your hard work on your side.
And thank you, Demian.
And very, very excited to see where this goes. And to all the listeners, I hope you find this as rewarding as we are, and please communicate with us too.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your stories and
your thoughts,
anecdotes, and if you've thoughts, questions. I mean, as we've said right at the beginning, we're not experts, but we want to open these discussions. We want to have these chats. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Talk to
Till
you
next week.
Till next week. Bye bye.
Ciao.